Coming up next.
I think it's being open to the Lord's leading. I mentioned that I have since gotten remarried and I have moved from New Mexico, where I was at the time, to Texas, where I am now. And my new husband is very supportive. And so when I went to him with this idea told him my little dream story and went to him with this idea that I wanted to do this blog, he was fine. You could do that, no problem. And he's totally supportive of that, even though it provides absolutely zero income. And it actually cost me, because as I'm sure you know, putting things on and, hosting fees and all of this kind of stuff, it cost me, but it's what I like to call my passion project. It's not what I do because I'm making a lot of money or any money by doing this, but it's really what I feel God called me to do. I feel like God gave me this message and this vision.
Welcome to Faith Over Addiction podcast, where the chains of fixing and striving are broken and joy is rediscovered in Christ. You are here because you know there's more for you, a life beyond addiction's chaos, rooted in God's peace and promises. This is the place where Christian women like you learn to release the weight of fixing and striving and instead lean into God's strength to create a home filled with love, grace, and hope. She is clothed with strength and dignity. Proverbs 31:25. That's you. You may not feel like it yet, but you are stronger than you know. And God has so much more for you than carrying someone else's addiction. Here, we'll uncover how to set healthy boundaries with love and a little humor. Find resilience and grace in the messy moments of life. Celebrate small victories and embrace joy like never before. Lean into God's promises for restoration and strength, because He's not done with your story or your loved ones. This is your invitation to rise up, embrace your worth in God's kingdom, and take back what's been stolen by addiction: your peace, your joy, your future. Your faith is the foundation, and your boundaries are the bridge, and God's truth is your guide. I'm Tanya Gioia, your host and fellow traveler on this journey through the chaos of addiction. I'm here to cheer you on, equip you with tools that work, and share the truth that's changed my life. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Together, we'll uncover how to create safe, loving space for healing, starting with your own heart and home. By setting boundaries, trusting God's plan, and embracing His truth, you can reclaim your joy, your peace, and your family's future. Then you will be able to stand firm for your family and legacy as a kingdom daughter. A woman who can laugh at the days to come, knowing her identity is secure in Christ. So grab a cup of coffee or tea and get comfortable. Let's walk this journey together. We're about to take back what's been stolen, create a safe, healing space for you and your family, and rediscover the joy God has waiting for you. Welcome back to Faith Over Addiction. I'm Tanya Gioia, and I have Marita Littauer with me today. What we're looking at is living your best life. So many of us who have been caring for those who are dealing with addiction have given up our lives in a way. We have focused on them. We have focused on how to take care of the family. And we've gone into a place to where we might have even abandoned ourselves. So Marita is going to speak to us about communication, about personalities, about how to gain your best life. She's an author of over 20 books and still writing away. Welcome, Marita.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
So tell me a little bit more about the best life. How do you begin to live that?
Well, I have started a blog now more than 2 years ago that we call the Best Life Project. And it came from a dream that I had. And, I have strange dreams a lot at night, but this particular dream was one I had at night. It was a nighttime dream, not like I had a vision kind of dream. And I was dreaming about my mother who had died recently. It's been now just 5 years ago since she's been gone. And she and I worked in ministry together for more than 30 years. But in this particular dream, my mother was there. And when I saw my mother in heaven in this dream, my mother was not the old lady who died at 92 years old. She was not the college student she was at one point, but she was at a place in life. This person I saw in my dream was at a place in life where she was really at her best, at her peak. And I woke up from that dream and I felt really strongly impressed with this dream that I had, that I was supposed to do something with this. And I felt like that, and I have no theological backing for this whatsoever, so I give you a disclaimer here, but I had this feeling that who we are in heaven is the person we were when we were our best. So, kind of in your example, if someone is dealing with an addiction, that's not when they are their best. And so if they are able to get past that addiction and move on, then later in life, they might be their best. And through my kind of idea here is that's who they would be in heaven. I don't know if people think about what are we going to be when we are in heaven. And my perception, and it's just from this dream, like I said, I have no theological backing for this, is that we will be our best. So then I started thinking about my own life. And I started thinking about, so what would I be in heaven? Would I be Marita on the stage as the speaker and writer that I was with thousands of people in the audience applauding? And I thought, no, that's not who I'm going to be. And I looked at my life and I said, you know what? I am currently today now living my best life. I faced an unwanted divorce. I got remarried. I basically lost my Christian speaker writer career when I got divorced, started my life all over again, got remarried, moved to another state. And you know what? I'm living my best life. And so that's kind of the idea of where this project came from.
That's awesome. I'm going to throw out Lisa Turkhurst, who very publicly walked
Lisa
through the divorce in the Christian area, whereas it's been probably 25 years. Amy Grant walked through a divorce and they banned her from the radio. They told her she couldn't be at concerts, that she had to basically walk away from her career at that time. She was married to a person who had an addiction issue. Who knows the real reason for the divorce, but I know that was part of it. As you are looking at your life, that you said unwanted divorce, and then the transition into this living my best life, how were you because you lost your career, you lost your marriage, everything else. How was the Lord walking with you through that?
Well, it's interesting you asked that because before we started recording here, you asked me, what are you working on currently? And I'm currently right now, as in today, writing an article on helping others through grief. And the fact of the matter is, how did the Lord help me through that? A lot of it is through much of what I'm writing in this article is through friends friends who were there with me and supported me and encouraged me and lifted me up. And I am a firm believer in the importance of a friend group. I also am a firm believer of, I live in Texas, and right now as we're recording this, we're dealing with a lot of grief in Texas over the floods and these sweet little girls who are lost from this Christian campground. And I used to be a Christian camp counselor, and it just, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to think of having to go through that. But some of the things that I've seen on Facebook, and they say things like, God doesn't promise us we won't face a difficulty, but what he promises is we will not face that alone. Yes. And that is certainly what I found in going through the difficulties that I have faced, is that often God works through the physical hands of our friends and family members.
What kept you? So what happens in an addictive family often is you try and make the outside picture look pretty. And to do that, you often isolate because you can't have people in your home because they would see what's going on. An unwanted divorce can also have similar. So
I
you're not.
totally agree with that. I remember when I was teaching a seminar and had just recently discovered that my husband was having an affair. And I was the teacher of the seminar along with my mother, and we had staff, others who were on the teaching team with us. And at that time, I said to my team members, you have got to just protect me. And was not my standard approach, but at that moment, I was so emotionally fragile that I could pull it together to stand up on the stage and teach the material that I knew so well. But I needed to kind of have a bubble around me to protect me from having to really face people for that very reason, because I was so emotionally fragile inside that I needed to kind of separate myself at that time.
You kept your close. You kept close your close.
Yes.
Right? Because even Jesus doesn't always take everybody with him. Like,
yes, true.
Right? James and John and Peter are the ones who go with him. So you kept
yes.
your close. What kept you from pushing away everybody and going, nobody can see this, I need to isolate?
Well, I think it does take time. I mean, I'm speaking from my personal experience, and as I discussed, I don't have an addiction experience, but it takes time to accept that this is my reality, and that other people have had the same reality. I'm not the only one who's ever had to deal with that. And when whatever your personal problem is, it feels like it's bigger than anyone else's problem because it's yours.
Yeah.
And so, it takes a while. For me, it took the unwanted divorce. I was ashamed. I was a Christian speaker and writer, and I wrote books on relationships. My ex-husband and I wrote a book together on marriage. And, it was, for me, it was shameful to acknowledge that I couldn't keep my own marriage together. And so, in fact, what I did, this is kind of tangential story, but my maiden name and my mother's name, my mother, Florence Littauer, has written more than 40 books. And so as a Christian writer, I went by Littauer because even though I was married, I went by Littauer because having that name was advantageous for marketing purposes.
Absolutely.
And so I went by Littauer. Well, once my husband had an affair and ultimately left me, and I dropped out of sight. I mean, I immediately took on my now ex-husband's name. And I suddenly became Marita Noon, not Marita Littauer, because I was truly hiding. I didn't want anyone to see me because I was so ashamed. I had a lot of shame connected with that. And it took a while, to get past that.
So when Elijah kills all the prophets of Baal and Jezebel says, I'm going to kill you, he runs, right? He runs. He is so afraid.
Yes.
God is very tender with him. He feeds him. He talks to him tenderly. He turns him around. How was God when you were dealing with your shame?
That's a good question. Like I said, it was, more the friends who embraced me. And I believe that was God. I'm not implying that God wasn't there, but I believe for me, he used friends who were able to comfort me and literally put their arms around me and tell me that this was going to be okay, that I was going to get through this. And it did truly take years before I could even tell you what I just told you.
Wow. So you lose your marriage, you basically lose your livelihood.
where did you go from there? I mean, you're hiding, you're like Elijah in the cave. He's like, somebody's trying to kill me, and
Yes.
hide.
Well, again, I guess is God's direction, I would say. Not I guess. I know it was God's direction. I took on an unusual job that when people saw what I was doing, they're like, why are you doing that? I became the executive director of a nonprofit organization that advocated on behalf of energy and the energy industry.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. A friend of mine who I wrote a book with, I wrote a book on praying for your husband. It's called the Praying Wives Club.
Mhm.
And this friend and I, and that's, I believe, is part of how I stayed in my marriage as long as I did while it wasn't perfect. And this friend of mine and I prayed once. We got together with a couple other gals once a week to pray for our husbands and our marriage. And
Mhm.
because of this, I knew, as I like to say, the backside of her husband, not what he presented to the world, but the backside of her husband. And he had this job as executive director of this nonprofit organization. And I knew he hated it
Mm.
because she and I prayed together weekly for our marriages. And so I knew that he hated this job. And so I reached out to her and I said, do you think I could do this job? And she said, oh, you could do it in your sleep, but you would hate it. And so I approached her husband and we talked, and ultimately I took over as executive director of this nonprofit organization. Now, there were no employees, so it was not like a big, huge entity, but I had to take on this, and within amount of time, I massaged it basically into something that was in my skill set. And I began speaking all over the country at oil and gas events. And I wrote an article a week for newspapers and websites. The newspapers were primarily in New Mexico and Texas in the oil patch. I used to say that I was popular in the patch. But I spoke in Ohio, I spoke in Mississippi, I spoke in Louisiana at oil and gas events. So God used that very same skill set that I had, and I used it in a totally different way.
What was the trust factor you needed to even talk to your friend and say, maybe I would be good at this?
Well, I think it was that time of praying together. Definitely. I mean, I know that's what we had, that kind of relationship, because when you pray with someone consistently every week for several years, you know each other's hearts and
Yeah.
you feel safe and respected by that person. And I think probably the safety is a big part of it.
So you do this job that's way far away and away from what you've been doing, pull it back into your skill set, and how then do you begin to step into your best life? You've made forward momentum rather than
Yes,
sitting
definitely.
and woe is me. You've made forward momentum.
Yeah. I think it's being open to the Lord's leading. I mentioned that I have since gotten remarried and I have moved from New Mexico, where I was at the time, to
Mhm.
Texas, where I am now. And my new husband is very supportive. And so when I went to him with this idea told him my little dream story and went to him with this idea that I wanted to do this blog, he was fine. You could do that, no problem. And
Mhm.
he's totally supportive of that, even though it provides absolutely zero income. And it
Mhm.
actually cost me, because as I'm sure you know, putting things on and, hosting fees and all of this kind of stuff, it cost me, but it's what I like to call my passion project. It's not what I do because I'm making a lot of money or any money by doing this, but it's really what I feel God called me to do. I feel like God gave me this message, and this vision. And little side note, and this may or may not be what you really want to know, but I think I had this dream in probably September, which is now almost 3 years ago. And in October, someone that my mother and I had trained back in the Christian speaker writer world days for me, reached out to me, and she said to me, I have just won the Ms. Senior America title.
Wow.
And
Okay.
she said to me, I feel like God has given me this platform and I need to do something with this. She said, I think I need to write a book. And she said, so that's why I'm calling you. I'm calling you for advice. And I said to her, Debbie, and I know her fairly well. We aren't close friends, but our lives have intersected over the years. And I said, Debbie, first off, it takes more than a year to get a book published, to write it and get it edited and get it printed and get it published. It takes more than a year. By the time, even if you are the world's greatest writer, by the time the book is published, you are no longer going to be Ms. Senior America. And so I said to her, what you need to do is have a blog where as soon as you write a chapter, you can produce that, you can publish it. And as you're out on the stage, on TV, on radio, whatever you're doing, you can go to people and tell them that they can go to such and such a website and read, whatever it is you want them to read. And so as I was telling her that, I got really excited about what I was telling her.
Yes.
And the next month, in early November, my sister and I were in Hawaii on a trip together, and I shared with my sister this best life dream story, and I shared with her what I had told Debbie, and my sister got all excited about it. And while she and I were sitting together in the hotel in Hawaii, she reached out to her son, who is technologically much more savvy than we old women are. And he immediately bought several domain names for us because we didn't know what we were doing at the time.
Sure.
So we bought every possible domain name that we might decide to use. And the primary domain name is Living Your Best Life 60 Plus, which is very long and cumbersome. And I just have evolved into using the Best Life Project.
Fantastic. Now you've given away the secret that I was coming to was,
oh, sorry.
This was Best Life 60 Plus. So our audience ranges from about 35 to 55. We have kind of that mid-range audience. What would you say to women who have walked through some losses that they didn't expect, didn't want, and are saying, hey, it's done for me? I mean, my grandparents who were givers and teachers and preachers in Sunday school, but they hit retirement age and they just stopped. And looking back on it, I can't believe it.
Yeah, that, especially if they were all that before. Now, I mean, one of the big things, and it sounds for you like your grandparents had this, is you need to have your health. And so there's kind of a trifecta of this best life idea. And that is, you need to have health, you need to have time, and you need to have resources. And, if you're struggling to make the house payment every day and you're working 3 jobs, I'm sorry, you're not living your best life. And that's a very hard place to be. And I wasn't always there myself, but fortunately now at 66, I'm healthy, and because of my age, I have time. And most of what we write on this blog is really applicable to almost anyone. You don't have to be in that age group, but there is kind of an assumption at our age that children are out of the house. I never had children, so for me personally, that was not the case. But there is an assumption that by the time you're over 60, that your children are grown and that they're out of the house, and that you're retired or facing retirement. And so you have time to launch something new and the health to engage in it.
Fantastic. So when you're stepping into that, you heard God calling you to do this. You had worked through and trusted him to bring you to where you are. What's the next step? Health, resources, time. Then what are you doing to live your best life?
For me personally?
For you personally and the people you help with Best Life Project.
Yeah, well, again, I guess I'm a big fan of friends. And so that's a big component for me. And many of the articles there, in fact, I just wrote a post. I was blessed, and I acknowledge this, to be able to go on a Caribbean vacation with myself and 5 other girlfriends. And I did that last month. And when I came home, I wanted to write an article on the value of girlfriend trips and why they can be so important for us. And so I wrote that, and that's it's one of the most popular pieces I've written in recent history. You know, you go through and you look at the views and so forth and the responses to it. And so I really encourage people, women, I mean, the blog is for women. And I really encourage women to make friends, and I offer a lot of guidelines in there. In fact, one of the things my sister and I are talking about writing right now, I've got a Post-it note right here about that, about this very thing, is that my sister, we started talking about the idea of loneliness. And that for so many people who are in this age group, perhaps like your grandmother, the retired, pull back from what they've been doing, is that there's a real loneliness. And my sister was telling me about someone she had recently talked to who realized that if she, and this is very sad to even think about, but that if she fell in her house and died, it would be days before anyone would even find her. And this particular person it was kind of a eye opener for her to realize this. And I don't know what precipitated this friend of my sister's realizing this. I don't know that, but it was really eye opening for her that, wow, I've got to do something different. And my sister started talking to people about the general idea of loneliness in our age category. And many of the people, her hairdresser that she talked to, and a gal that works in her husband's business, they were all kind of in the same place. And so that's something that we're looking at. Don't have the answers at the moment, but I find it's very important to be able to reach out. And one of the things I'm doing currently, but this is me. Different people have different interest levels. Different people have different skill sets. I love to cook, and I love to entertain. I love to have people over to my house. My husband does not share that
love.
Yes. And so when I first moved to Lubbock, Texas, married to him, I literally cried 6 months into our marriage. I literally cried that I didn't have enough friends to have a dinner party. I mean, I cried real tears. Now I've been here 10 and a half years, and I now have so many friends that when I want to have a dinner party, I have to have a lottery. No, I'm serious.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's
I have right here this little cup, and this has numbers on it. And this is my dinner party lottery right there. And so because I can only seat 8, it only works well to have 8 people around the table.
Sure.
But I realized I wasn't having a dinner party because I didn't want anyone to feel left out.
So
and the story of this is on the blog. So I started this, I sent out an email to everybody and said, I've had this epiphany. I realized, and I told my little story about crying because I didn't know enough people to have a dinner party and so forth. And that I realized that I still wasn't having a dinner party now because I had too many friends. And I have, again, it's in the blog, but I had a really concentrated effort to meet people. And so I started having these people signed up. Yes, I'd like to be part of your dinner party lottery. My husband thinks it's a little weird, but I'm like, hey, these people all signed up for this and they want to do this. Well, because my husband's not as into it as I am, I don't do it as frequently as I want to, because I kind of have to go, can I please have a dinner party? And usually at the end of the dinner party, he says, well, it wasn't as bad as I expected, or that was pretty good. And so now what I've started to do is what I'm calling the luncheon edition.
Ooh.
And I just invite the ladies.
Yes,
And
ladies
I
at
do it.
lunch, right?
I do it for lunch, and it's easier. There's less food. It's easier to prepare. It's more cost effective. And I have 8 gals, myself and 7 gals around the table. And I'm this month I'm doing is my 3rd month of doing the luncheon edition. Well, the reason I tell you all that is to say, being creative about inviting people into your life. And one of the gals that is in my group of girlfriends is someone that I met at Chico's. And we got to talking, and she was saying that she just moved to Lubbock and she was having a hard time making friends. And I said,
Just for those listeners, Chico's is a restaurant.
no, Chico's is a women's clothing store.
Oh, I thought it was a restaurant.
Well, there is a restaurant, probably Chico's too, but what I'm talking about is the women's clothing store.
Okay.
And it's a national chain, Chico's. You may not be their demographic because I am their demographic, but anyway, I met this woman who's working in this clothing store, and I find out that she's new in town and has a hard time making friends. And I say, oh, well, I'm having a Christmas party. You should come to my Christmas party. And she gives me her name and her email address. And when we leave the parking lot, I was with my mother at Chico's at the time. My mom was still alive. And she said to me, I think she's Jewish. I said, I don't care. If she wants to come to my Christmas party, that's fine with me. And she came. I did follow up and email her, and she did come, and she's now moved away. Her husband's retired and they've moved to Florida. But we were friends for a great many years because I met her in Chico's. And
wow.
I got someone now that I met at where I work out. I watch for people who are alone.
Yes. Because
I was there.
Marita, we all need somebody like you in our lives. So I love how this moves from unwanted to moving into something that was totally out of you wouldn't have thought about it. You wouldn't have thought about a job in gas and oil. Ooh, let's edit that. You wouldn't have thought about a job in gas and oil at all.
Yeah.
And then the Lord is calling you into sharing your home.
Yeah, and I think really a lot of it is having a mindset that is willing to look at something new.
Yeah.
And willing to step out of your comfort zone to the doors that God opens for you. I think God opens doors for a lot of us that we aren't willing to see.
On your blog, is there step-by-step how to have a dinner party or how to have a lunch edition version?
Even with recipes and a timeline.
Woohoo! All right, give us the layout of the blog. Where's the .com? How do we find that?
It's bestlifeproject.com, but there is a hyphen between best and life. So it's just bestlifeproject.com.
So if the women listening are not really ready for the full-blown lunch or dinner party, what else do you suggest to stem the isolation?
Well, in the blog is a post. It's one of the early ones I wrote, and the blog has been in existence now for more than 2 years. So you kind of have to go back. But if you just click on my name, you'll see the ones I wrote, because I have other people who write for it as well. It's not all just me. In fact, I'm constantly looking for people who have something to address for that demographic.
So not only can they read it, but they can fill out a form to write for you then.
Yes. Awesome. They can. If that's something that they feel is right for them, they can do it. But one of the pieces I wrote early on is called Building a Merry Little Band. And it's about, finding friends. It's about reaching out to people who are around you who may be alone, being alert to them, watching for them. I'm a greeter at my church on the 5th Sunday of the month, which means I only do it 4 times a year.
Right.
But I'm on the 5th Sunday team. And some of my friends I've met greeting at church, and when you're greeting at church, you say, so how did you, do you come here all the time? No, this is my first time here. And you can always spot the first timers. They walk in with this kind of like
dazed look.
Yeah, and you can tell who hasn't been there before. And so some of my friends I found from church, some I found at the clothing store, some I found at the gym. But I do have an article, a piece on the blog about creating a group of friends when you don't have a group of friends.
And we forget, sometimes when you have kids, they become automatic friends because you're doing
Yes.
the same things
Yes.
that they're doing. Or when we're in college or jobs, then there's also those people that we see all the time. We went pandemic and people literally lost their minds. So I encourage everyone who's listening to go and create your own little merry band. Marita, thank you for being so vulnerable with us about, there has been significant tragedy in your life, significant downs and ups. You had to lose a career, lose a marriage, and then God has brought you back into fullness again. That
Yes, that's
is
very true.
fantastic. Anything else you want to leave for women who are feeling isolated and like they can't step out? Is there anything more for those that are a little more introverted?
Yeah, and that's obviously I'm not introverted, and so it is. But I think really watching for people, having a heart for others who may be hurting, who may be alone, depending on the group. There's yeah, I mentioned I'm writing an article right now on grief, and there's a support group called the Compassionate Friends, which is for people who have lost a child. And I'm just throwing that out there as an example where someone might go. I mean, I'm sure there's Alcoholics Anonymous, there's, drug support groups. There's all kinds of groups that are out there. And I was at a luncheon today, and a woman was sitting across the table from me, a sister to someone who's in the women's club that I'm in Lubbock, the Lubbock Women's Club. There's another opportunity, things like that. You have to you're not going to meet new people sitting at home feeling sorry for yourself. But as I was at this luncheon today, I just want to finish this bit. This woman across the table, I was talking about this grief article. I don't know how we got into it. I guess this month is Bereaved Parent Month.
Oh.
And somehow that came up in the conversation. And this woman across the table cued right in on that. And turns out she's lost a child, and she lives in Sweden, but her sister lives in Lubbock, Texas. So she was here for this luncheon, and we immediately had a conversation about loss. And, it's just, so you've got to be willing to take that first step. You've got to be willing to go to that support group, to go to that gym, to, go to a club, go to something.
And that doesn't mean you have to take on the responsibility to host something, but like you said, you could go to something pre-existing. Often people will invite you to things. Some of it is just not saying no.
Yes, very true.
Yeah. Marita, tell us again where we can find you and the name of the Merry Little Band article. I think that's awesome.
It's at best-lifeproject.com, and the post on that topic is simply building a merry little band, and I offer a lot of suggestions. I mean, my girlfriend group right now, let me see if I can easily get my hand on this. We have a spreadsheet of my friends.
That's fantastic.
Again, 10 years ago, I knew no one. And you know what I did? This is a really silly thing, but I'm going to throw it out there, and it's in this article.
Yeah.
Is I posted, backing up, when I lived in New Mexico, this was when this particular story happened, was in early December. And I was lying in bed one morning, again, feeling sorry for myself that I was new here and I didn't know anyone. And I said to myself as I was in bed, if I was back in New Mexico, I would be hosting the church women's Christmas party.
Oh.
Because that's what I did. I hosted the church women's Christmas party for my church. Well, I had been around churches for my whole life, and I know that if I was to approach my new church and say, I would like to host a church women's Christmas party, first off, it's already December. They're gonna, and they don't know me. So, church, they've got to have some relationship with you. And so I was feeling sorry for myself. And so you know what I did? I posted on the Nextdoor app.
Okay.
for my neighborhood and said, I'm thinking of hosting a Christmas party for our neighborhood. Is anyone interested in coming? And they did.
Woohoo! Look at you go.
And I had 30 women in my house, some of whom I'm still friends with, some of whom I'm not friends with, but I know them and we see each other and we're friendly. They just don't happen to be my close friends. But yeah, I had a Christmas party for total strangers.
Look at the courage. And where was God behind all that courage?
He was there giving me the ideas.
The desires of your heart.
Yeah, exactly.
Marita, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. This is so strong for those women who feel isolated, who feel like, oh no, I can't do that. Latch on and volunteer. Go to your church. You don't need to host the whole thing. You could just, if they're already throwing a Christmas party, go ahead and say, hey, can I wash the dishes? All those things.
I'll help set the table. Find someone like me who, is willing to bring you along.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you again for all that you bring and living your best life project. That's fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Faith Over Addiction podcast. Remember, nothing changes until something changes. Today is your day to step out in faith and make a difference. You are a daughter of the King, a woman who can spark incredible ripple effects of hope and healing, not just in your own life, but in your family, your community, and God's kingdom. If this episode encouraged you, bless someone else by sharing it. Send it to a friend who needs a little hope or post it on Instagram and tag me. I'd love to hear what resonated most with you. And hey, if you're ready to reclaim your God-given identity and create a safe, loving space for yourself and those you care about, let's talk. Book a quick call with me today, and I'd love to hear your story and help you take the next step. Oh, and don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts, search for Faith Over Addiction, and leave me a review. Your feedback not only makes my day, but helps other women find this podcast and step into freedom too. You are strong, you are loved, and the joy of the Lord is your strength. Nehemiah 8:10. Until next time, keep walking boldly into the life God has for you.